Today I'm going to tell you a story that will not only make you reflect, but it might change how you see your own life completely. Throughout this video, you'll discover deep teachings that will transform the way you heal both your body and mind. But the most impactful part comes at the end. And believe me, you won't want to miss that final step which will reveal an ancestral secret. Each lesson is carefully designed to lead you to a deeper level of wisdom. So, stay until the end, and when you finish, tell me in the comments which of these teachings resonated the most with you. In a serene and peaceful corner lived an old turtle named Tatsu, famous for his wisdom and calm. His home was in the heart of a lush forest where the days passed in harmony, accompanied by the whisper of the leaves and the songs of the birds. Although his life seemed tranquil, something was troubling Tatsu. Lately, he had noticed that the animals in the forest, his old friends, were becoming more restless and hurried. They were caught in a cycle of constant worries, losing the ability to enjoy the little pleasures of life. This worried him deeply, as Tatsu knew that true peace is not found in hurry or chaos, but in stillness and the present. One day, while slowly walking along the riverbank, Tatsu heard a young rabbit named Fluff complaining loudly. Fluff, always nervous and in a hurry, ran from side to side without really knowing why. He was looking for something, but he didn't even know what it was. There's so much to do, so many things that worry me. I can't stop for a second, or the world will fall on me, he shouted as he ran past Tatsu. The turtle, moved by his compassion and knowledge, decided to approach him. Fluff, said Tatsu with his soft and deep voice. Why are you in such a hurry? What are you looking for with so much rush? The rabbit stopped for a moment, breathing heavily from running, and looked at the turtle. I don't know, Tatsu, Fluff replied, but I feel that if I don't run, if I don't do something all the time, fear will catch up with me, and I will be trapped in my own thoughts. I feel like I can't stop for a second. Tatsu watched him in silence for a moment, understanding what really worried him. The fear you feel is not outside, Fluff, but inside you. It is your own mind that is trapping you. But there is a way to find peace in the midst of all this chaos. And it has nothing to do with running or doing more. It's about stopping and simply breathing. Fluff frowned, confused. Breathing? But I breathe all the time, Tatsu. I don't understand how that could help me. Tatsu smiled with the calmness that only someone who has lived a long life can have. It's true that you breathe, Fluff, but you're not aware of it. You don't pay attention to your breathing, and that's where the problem lies. Conscious breathing is an ancestral technique that teaches us to connect with the present moment, to calm the mind and body. It is a door to the inner peace that we always carry within, but we forget to open it amid the noise and worries. The rabbit, intrigued but still somewhat skeptical, sat down in front of Tatsu. How do I do that? How do you breathe consciously? He asked. The turtle closed his eyes, inviting the rabbit to do the same. First, sit comfortably, relax your body, and close your eyes. Now focus all your attention on your breath. Don't try to change it, just observe it. Feel how the air enters through your nose, goes down your throat, and fills your lungs, and then feel how it slowly leaves. Just that. Don't think about anything else, just your breath. Fluff followed his instructions, although it was hard for him to concentrate at first. His mind kept jumping from one thought to another, worried about the things he had to do, about the things that could go wrong. Tatsu, who watched him attentively, encouraged him to continue. Don't worry if your mind gets distracted. That's normal. Every time you notice your mind has wandered, just bring it back to the breath, over and over again. That's the practice. They spent a few minutes in silence, where only the gentle flow of the river and the whisper of the leaves could be heard. Slowly, Fluff began to feel something different. His breathing, which had been fast and shallow, started to become slower and deeper. His body, once tense, began to relax. And most importantly, the sense of urgency and anxiety that always accompanied him began to fade, even if just for a moment. Tatsu slowly opened his eyes, and watched the young rabbit. "How do you feel now?" he asked with a slight smile. Fluff opened his eyes, and for the first time in a long time, didn't feel overwhelmed. "It's strange. For a moment I stopped worrying about what I had to do or what might happen. I was just here, breathing. I had never experienced anything like that." Tatsu felt satisfied. That's the magic of conscious breathing, Fluff. When you learn to focus your mind on your breath, you stop being trapped in the past or the future and connect with the present. It's in that space between one breath and another where you can find true peace. No matter what happens around you, you can always return to that space of calm, simply by breathing. Fluff sat in silence, processing what he had experienced. "And that's it? I just have to breathe like that whenever I feel anxious or worried?" Tatsu laughed softly. "Yes, that's it. But like all important things in life, it requires practice. At first, it may seem difficult because our mind is used to running from one thought to another. But the more you practice, the easier it will be to return to that state of calm. The breath is always your anchor, no matter how stormy the sea of life." The young rabbit nodded, understanding that he had learned something invaluable. He slowly stood up, calmer than when he arrived, and looked at Tatsu with gratitude. "Thank you, Tatsu. I never thought that something as simple as breathing could make me feel so good." Tatsu looked at him with kind eyes. "Remember, Fluff, wisdom isn't always found in complicated things. Sometimes the deepest answers lie in the simplest things. Breathing is always with you. It's the most basic gift of life. If you learn to respect it and use it consciously, you'll find the peace you're seeking." With those words, Fluff began to walk more slowly, experiencing each step and each breath in a new way. Tatsu watched him walk away, aware that he had planted a seed of calm in his young friend. As the sun set on the horizon, the turtle closed his eyes and again focused on his breathing, feeling the profound connection between his body and the universe the following day after having assimilated the valuable lesson of conscious breathing. Fluff decided to return to see Tatsu. He felt different, more serene, but still had doubts. Although the breathing technique had given him momentary relief, he knew there was much more to learn about how to deal with his inner restlessness. He wanted to continue discovering the wisdom of the old turtle. When he arrived at the riverbank, he found Tatsu sitting on the same rock, calm, as if she were always observing the water flow with the same unwavering patience that characterized her. Fluff, calmer than usual, sat down next to her. "Tatsu, I feel much better since you taught me to breathe consciously, but I feel there is something more I need to learn. Sometimes, even though I breathe deeply and try to calm down, my mind keeps jumping from one side to the other, as if I can't stop worrying about everything," said the young rabbit with a mix of gratitude and frustration. Tatsu, with a gentle smile, nodded. She knew that conscious breathing was just the beginning. What you described, Fluff, is very common. We all struggle with our thoughts at some point. Sometimes, our thoughts drag us like a mighty river, taking us to places we don't want to go. It is in those moments when we must remember an ancient technique that teaches us to visualize and direct our mind towards something deeper, more positive. Today I will teach you about healing visualization. Fluff frowned, intrigued. Healing visualization? How does that work? Tatsu slowly got up from her rock and invited him to walk with her. As they slowly moved through the forest, the turtle began to explain. Visualization is an ancient technique that involves using the power of your mind to imagine images or scenarios that help you heal, whether emotionally or physically. Our thoughts have immense power, and when directed correctly, they can have a direct impact on our well-being. As they walked, Tatsu led Fluff to a small cave surrounded by tall, lush trees. At the entrance of the cave, there was a natural spring that emanated crystal clear water, gently cascading over the rocks. "Here," said Tatsu, pointing to the water. "I want you to sit in front of the spring and close your eyes. We're going to practice a visualization." Fluff, still curious and somewhat skeptical, sat down at the indicated spot and closed his eyes, as Tatsu had told him. The turtle sat beside him, her calm and steady voice guiding him through the process. Imagine you are here, in this same place, but instead of the cave, there is a bright light surrounding your body. This light is warm and healing. Feel how the light begins at the top of your head and slowly moves down your neck, your shoulders, your back, and continues down your entire body. Fluff began to imagine the light, and in doing so, felt a gentle warmth spread through his body. It was a strange but pleasant sensation. As the light moved down his back, he felt as if the weight he had been carrying for so long was lifting. The light heals you, Fluff, and with every breath you take, that light becomes stronger and brighter. It takes away any tension you have, any worries, any fear. Feel how that light cleanses your body and mind. Fluff, now fully focused on the visualization, allowed himself to immerse in the experience. As he imagined the healing light, he felt his body relax deeply, much more than the day before. The images of his daily worries seemed to fade, and in their place was only the feeling of peace and calm that the light brought. Tatsu observed how the rabbit began to relax and, after a while, continued his teaching. This light you imagine is not just a creation of your mind, Fluff. It is a reflection of the healing energy that we all carry within. We all have the ability to heal, but we often forget that this power is within us. Healing visualization is a way to remember this, to connect with that part of us that can bring balance and peace. After several minutes in silence, Tatsu asked Fluff to slowly open his eyes. The young rabbit did so, and as he opened them, his gaze was different. There was a serenity in his eyes that wasn't there before. "I feel light," said Fluff, surprised by the sensation. "It's as if everything that worried me had disappeared. Although I know the worries are still there, they don't affect me in the same way now." Tatsu nodded wisely. "That's because now you understand that you can control how you respond to your worries. You can't make them disappear, but you can decide how to face them. By using healing visualization, you give your mind a break from its storms, and that allows you to see things more clearly." Fluff reflected on what he had learned. "So, when I feel overwhelmed, or when my mind won't stop thinking about things I can't control, can I use this technique to find peace?" Tatsu smiled. "Exactly. Visualization not only helps you heal emotionally, but also physically. If you ever feel sick or tired, you can imagine this healing light moving through your body, regenerating every part of you. It's a powerful tool you can use whenever you need it." The young rabbit stood up filled with gratitude. He knew that what he had learned that day would not only help him in times of stress, but also give him a way to care for his body and mind throughout his life. He said goodbye to Tatsu, promising to practice the visualization whenever he needed it. As Fluff walked away, Tatsu watched him with satisfaction. She knew he had taken another important step on his path to inner peace. The turtle, calm and serene as always, sat once more by the spring and closed her eyes. With each breath, she felt the healing light within her, keeping her in balance, reminding her that true healing always begins from within. And so, Tatsu continued to share her ancestral wisdom, knowing that each lesson she imparted not only helped her friends in the forest, but also kept alive the connection with the ancient teachings that, generation after generation, had healed so many. A few days after learning the healing visualization technique, Fluff felt more serene and at peace. However, the young rabbit hadn't lost his curiosity. He was grateful for Tatsu's teachings, but he knew there was still much more he could learn from the wise turtle. So, once again, he decided to visit his friend in search of more lessons. When he arrived at the same clearing where he had practiced the visualization, he found Tatsu sitting by the riverbank, watching the calm waters with a gaze full of serenity. Fluff sat down beside her without saying anything, patiently waiting for the turtle to speak first. After a long while in silence, Tatsu spoke without taking his eyes off the river. Water always flows, Fluff, no matter what obstacle it encounters in its path. It always finds a way to move forward, flowing with calm and determination. The same should happen with our emotions and thoughts. We must learn to let them go, to let them flow without clinging to them, just as water does not stop before rocks. Fluff frowned. Let them go? How can I do that, Tatsu? Sometimes I feel so attached to my worries that it seems impossible to let them go. How can I simply let go of something that feels so important? Tatsu looked at him gently and nodded. It's a valid question, Fluff, and one that many ask themselves. But the problem lies in believing that our worries, our attachments, and desires are the only things that matter. In Buddhism, there is a deep teaching about detachment. It is an ancient technique that teaches us to let go of what binds us, what causes us suffering. It doesn't mean we should be indifferent to what happens around us, but rather that we must learn not to cling to what we cannot control. Fluff bowed his head, still somewhat confused. And how am I supposed to do that? How can one live without clinging to things? Tatsu smiled at him and invited him to follow her along a small path that led into the forest. As they walked, Tatsu told him a story. A long time ago, I met an old crow who lived on top of a mountain. This crow spent his days collecting shiny objects he found. He stored them in his nest, convinced that the more things he had, the safer he would feel. However, over time, the nest became so heavy that it began to collapse. Despite this, the crow kept clinging to his objects until one day the nest completely collapsed, taking everything he had accumulated with it. The crow was left with nothing, but it was at that moment that he learned something very important. He didn't need those things to be happy. He learned that true freedom and peace do not come from what we accumulate, but from what we are able to let go of. Fluff listened attentively as he walked alongside Tatsu. The story of the crow made him reflect on his own worries. He often clung so tightly to his fears and desires that he felt trapped by them, unable to move forward. But now he began to understand what Tatsu was trying to teach him. So, how do I start to detach, Tatsu? How can I let go of all that weighs me down? Fluff asked with genuine curiosity. Tatsu stopped in front of a large tree and looked him in the eyes. The first step is to recognize that most of the things you cling to are not permanent. Nothing in this life is. Buddhism teaches us that everything changes, everything passes. Attachment arises when we believe we can hold on to something forever, whether it's an emotion, a possession, or even a person. But when we accept that nothing is eternal, we realize there is no point in clinging. Impermanence is part of life, and instead of resisting, we must accept it. Fluff nodded slowly, beginning to understand the depth of what Tatsu was saying. So, is it a matter of accepting that everything changes? Exactly, Tatsu replied. But not just that. We also need to learn to live in the present. Attachment drags us to the past, to things that are no longer there, or throws us into the future, to things that haven't happened yet. The present is the only real thing, the only thing we have. When we learn to live fully in the here and now, attachment loses its power over us. Tatsu sat down by the large tree and motioned for Fluff to sit beside her. Close your eyes, Fluff. Let's practice a simple detachment technique. Think of something you're holding on to, something that is causing you distress or worry. Now, imagine that worry is a leaf. Visualize that leaf in your hands. Observe its details, how it feels, and then imagine there is a gentle breeze that takes it from your hands and carries it away. Watch how the leaf drifts away, floating freely, until it disappears on the horizon. Fluff did as Tatsu instructed. He thought about one of his greatest worries, the fear of not meeting all the expectations he had for himself. As he visualized the leaf in his hands, he felt the weight of that worry. But as he imagined the wind carrying it away, something inside him began to change. He felt as if a burden was lifting, as if by letting go of that leaf, he was also letting go of a part of his anxiety. By letting go of that leaf, Tatsu continued, "You're not giving up on your responsibilities or your goals. You're just releasing your attachment to them. You're allowing them to flow naturally, without clinging or forcing them. That is the key to detachment. Letting life take its course without trying to control everything." When Fluff opened his eyes, he felt lighter. The practice of detachment hadn't solved all his problems, but he had learned something invaluable. He didn't need to cling to his worries as if his life depended on them. He could let them go, just like a leaf in the wind, and trust that things would follow their natural course. "Tatsu," said Fluff with a grateful smile, "I think I'm starting to understand. It's not that I shouldn't worry or have goals, but I shouldn't cling to them so desperately. I can let go a little and trust that everything will follow its course." Tatsu nodded with satisfaction. "Exactly, Fluff. Life is like a river. If you cling to the rocks, it will wear you down. But if you learn to flow with the current, you will find peace and balance." Detachment is a powerful tool that will help you navigate the waters of life without being swept away by the current. And so, with each lesson Tatsu shared, Fluff moved closer to a life of serenity and wisdom. He had learned to breathe consciously, to visualize healing within himself, and now to let go of what he couldn't control. He knew he still had much to learn, but with each step he felt closer to the inner peace he sought. After learning the techniques of conscious breathing, healing, visualization, and detachment, Fluff felt his life had profoundly changed. Every day, he practiced Tatsu's lessons and felt his mind calm. His worries no longer overwhelmed him as much, and he had begun to let go of what tied him to suffering. However, he knew there was still more to learn, and one day he decided to seek out his wise friend, the turtle, again. When he arrived at the forest clearing where Tatsu usually was, he found her in silence, looking at the sky with an expression of deep serenity. Fluff sat beside her, waiting patiently until Tatsu, as always, began to speak. Today I want to talk to you about something that is perhaps one of the most important and powerful teachings that exist in Buddhist practice, and in many other traditions. Loving kindness, or metta, said Tatsu gently. It is a practice of self-healing that not only transforms your life, but can also heal those around you. Fluff blinked, intrigued by the term loving kindness. What exactly does that mean, Tatsu? Tatsu looked at him with a gentle smile. Metta is a practice that involves generating and cultivating feelings of unconditional love and benevolence, first towards yourself and then towards others. It is a love that asks for nothing in return, that does not depend on circumstances or how you are treated. It is a love that comes from the deepest part of your being, and by practicing it, you heal yourself and heal the world around you. The young rabbit frowned. But, Tatsu, how can I have that kind of love for others? Sometimes it's hard to be kind when someone has hurt you, or when you feel the world is unjust. Tatsu nodded understandingly. It is natural to feel that loving kindness is difficult, especially when you have been hurt or feel the world has not been kind to you. But metta does not mean ignoring your feelings or allowing others to harm you. It is about recognizing that we are all connected in some way, and that the compassion you cultivate within yourself can be a source of healing for you and for others. We start with ourselves, Fluff, and then extend that love to others. Fluff looked towards the river, reflecting on what Tatsu was saying. How do I start then? How can I cultivate that loving kindness? Sometimes I don't even feel capable of being kind to myself. Tatsu smiled, aware that this was the greatest challenge for many, learning to be compassionate with oneself. The first thing you need to understand, Fluff, is that metta is a practice, not a feeling that arises immediately. You need to cultivate it patiently, like a plant that grows little by little. Start with yourself. Sit in a quiet place like this. Close your eyes, and just like we did with the healing visualization, imagine that there is a warm light inside you. That light represents the loving kindness you already possess, even though we sometimes forget it. Fluff, following her instructions, closed his eyes, and tried to visualize that light. At first, it was just a small glow, but with each deep breath, the light began to expand, filling his body with warmth. Now repeat in your mind these words. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be at peace, continued Tatsu, guiding the rabbit with her calm voice. Fluff, with his eyes closed, repeated the words silently. At first, it felt strange, as if he were asking for something he didn't deserve. But as he repeated them, he began to feel the truth behind those words. Gradually, the light inside him grew more intense. When you feel comfortable with this love towards yourself, continued Tatsu, start expanding it towards others. Begin with someone you love, someone for whom it is easy to wish well. Visualize that person and repeat the same words, but now for them. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be at peace. Fluff, still with his eyes closed, thought of his mother, the rabbit who had always cared for him with so much love. He imagined the light within him extending towards her, enveloping her in that warmth, and repeated the words, May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be at peace. In doing so, he felt a deep connection with her, as if somehow his love was traveling to her at that very moment. Now comes the hardest part, said Tatsu after a while. After sending loving kindness to those you love, extend it to someone with whom you have problems, someone who has hurt you, or with whom you have resentment. This is the true test of metta, being able to send love even to those who have caused you pain. Fluff opened his eyes, surprised. Sending love to someone who has hurt me? But how can I do that, Tatsu? I don't want to be kind to them. They hurt me. Tatsu looked at him with compassion. I know, Fluff. It is the hardest thing you can do, but it is also the most liberating. You don't do it for them. You do it for yourself. By sending loving kindness, you release the hatred and resentment that are binding you. It doesn't mean you are forgiving their actions or that you should forget them. It just means you are allowing yourself to heal. Hatred and resentment are like poison we carry inside, and the only way to free yourself from that poison is through loving kindness. Fluff reflected in silence. He knew there was someone in his life with whom he had conflicts. Another rabbit, Rilo, who always teased him when they were young. Although he no longer lived nearby, Fluff still felt resentment towards him. He couldn't imagine sending loving kindness to him, but he also understood that Tatsu was right. The resentment didn't hurt Rilo, it hurt him. So, with effort, he closed his eyes again and tried to visualize Rilo in front of him. Although at first the image made him uncomfortable, Fluff took a deep breath and tried to direct the light towards him. Despite the difficulty, he mentally repeated, May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be at peace. In doing so, something inside him began to change. Not immediately, but slowly, as if the weight in his heart was lifting. He didn't feel great love for Rilo, but he no longer felt the hatred and resentment he had before, and for Fluff, that was a big step. He opened his eyes and looked at Tatsu, who observed him with a serene smile. You did well, Fluff. Metta is not something you achieve in a single day. It is a daily practice. Every time you feel resentment, anger, or sadness, you can resort to this technique. Over time, you will realize that loving kindness is an inexhaustible source of healing for you and for others. Fluff nodded, grateful. He knew he had begun a new path, one that would lead him to a more peaceful life filled with compassion. He had understood that love is not just something you receive, but something you cultivate from within and share with the world. Thus, Fluff said goodbye to Tatsu, ready to continue his journey, knowing that every step he took was filled with loving kindness, both for himself and for others. In the following days, Fluff continued practicing everything Tatsu had taught him. He breathed consciously every morning, visualized the healing light when he felt his energy fading, practiced detachment from everyday worries, and cultivated loving kindness towards himself and others. Despite all these advances, he knew his learning journey was not over. He felt there was one last step in his personal transformation, and that Tatsu still had one more lesson to offer him. One afternoon, Fluff returned to the clearing where he always met the turtle. The sun was beginning to set, and the sky was painted with shades of orange and purple. Tatsu was waiting for him, as always, with her infinite calm. Fluff sat next to her, and before he could say anything, Tatsu spoke. "Fluff, you have learned many important lessons during this time. You have discovered how to calm your mind, heal your body, let go of what weighs you down, and extend loving kindness. Now it's time to teach you something fundamental to maintain everything you've learned. The meditation of mindfulness, also known as Seisen." Fluff listened intently, knowing that this new lesson would be crucial. "What is Seisen, Tatsu?" asked the young rabbit. She looked at him with serenity and began to explain. Seisen is an ancient practice that involves sitting in stillness, paying full attention to the present moment. It connects us to the nature of existence, to life as it is, without judgments or distractions. Through Seisen, you learn to observe your thoughts and emotions without clinging to them, to experience reality directly as it is, without trying to change it. This practice is the foundation of inner tranquility and will allow you to integrate all the lessons you have learned. Fluff frowned, intrigued. "Is it just about sitting and observing? Is that all?" Tatsu smiled. "It seems simple, but it is one of the most profound and transformative practices. The mind is always full of thoughts, worries, and distractions. When we practice Seisen, we give ourselves the space to observe those thoughts without identifying with them, without letting them carry us away. It's like sitting by a river and watching leaves float in the current without clinging to any. You learn to be completely present here and now." Fluff, still a little confused, nodded. "How do I start?" Tatsu invited him to sit next to her in a comfortable posture. Sit with your back straight, close your eyes, and bring your attention to your breath, as we did in the conscious breathing practice. But this time you don't need to control or change your breath, just observe it. Let it flow naturally. Every time your mind gets distracted by a thought, simply return to your breath. Don't fight against the thoughts, but don't cling to them either. Just observe them and let them pass, like clouds in the sky. Fluff closed his eyes and began to follow Tatsu's instructions. At first, his mind jumped from one thought to another, worrying about what he had to do tomorrow, what had happened in the past, or just wandering into trivial matters. But as Tatsu had told him, each time he realized that his mind had wandered, he returned to his breath, without judgment, without frustration. Over time, Fluff began to notice something curious. The more he focused on his breath, the less power the thoughts had over him. They didn't disappear, but they no longer carried him away as before. He felt that he could see them pass without feeling overwhelmed by them. As Tatsu had told him, it was as if there was a space between him and his thoughts, a distance that allowed him to observe them without identifying with them. After several minutes, Tatsu broke the silence with her soft voice. "How do you feel, Fluff?" The young rabbit opened his eyes slowly, feeling a deep peace he had never experienced before. "It's different," he replied. "I feel that my thoughts no longer control me as much. They're still there, but it's as if I can see them from afar." Tatsu, satisfied, nodded. "That is Seisen, Fluff. The practice of being present, of not clinging to thoughts or emotions. There will always be moments of chaos, of uncertainty in life. But if you learn to cultivate this inner calm, you will be able to face them with serenity. Seisen is not just a meditation. It is a way of living in peace, of being in harmony with the nature of the present." Fluff reflected on what he had just experienced. He knew that this practice would be fundamental in his life, a tool that would help him stay centered and balanced in any circumstance. "Tatsu, this is the most powerful lesson of all. Thank you for teaching me to be present." Tatsu smiled warmly. "Remember, Fluff, life is a constant flow. There will always be changes. There will always be challenges. But if you learn to be present and observe life with mindfulness, you will find the peace you seek. Peace is not in what happens outside, but in how you respond to what happens. And that response comes from the stillness you cultivate within. Fluff nodded, feeling a deep gratitude towards Tatsu for all the teachings she had given him. He knew that with this last lesson, he had learned something invaluable, a technique that would allow him to face any situation with serenity and wisdom. He slowly got up and looked at Tatsu, who observed him with her calm and wise gaze. Tatsu, thank you for everything. You haven't just taught me self-healing techniques. You've taught me to live in a way I never imagined. I feel different, lighter, more at peace. Tatsu nodded, satisfied. Fluff, you have come a long way, but the learning never ends. Each day is a new opportunity to practice what you have learned, to cultivate peace and love within yourself. Don't forget that, just like the river always flows, you too must keep moving forward with calm and wisdom. With those words, Fluff said goodbye to Tatsu, knowing that his journey of learning was not over, but just beginning. As he walked through the forest, he felt a deep connection with the life around him, a connection that had always been there, but that he now understood thanks to the turtle's teachings. He knew that no matter what happened in the future, he could always return to that inner space of calm he had discovered through Seisen. And so, the young rabbit continued his path, carrying with him the lessons of conscious breathing, healing visualization, detachment, loving kindness, and mindfulness. With every step he took, he knew that true peace and self-healing were always within reach, inside him, waiting to be cultivated day after day. If you made it to the end, please comment. Complete visualization. See you next time, my dear friends.